Hello and welcome to my theme park journey. I'm Liam and today I'm going to be talking about Thorpe Park's theming, its lands and its areas, because I feel that it's really sort of mixed match, and I'm just going to sort of talk about what I feel about it, how I would improve it, what I would like to see happen to it. So yeah, if you want to sort of sit and listen, grab a coffee, grab a tea, whatever, sit and listen. This is just so I don't sit and bore my partner to death with rabbiting on about it all the time. So I have written a few notes down just so that I can remember all the different lands and all the different areas in Thorpe Park. Because like I said, with Thorpe Park, I feel that they're very, very sort of like mixed match, and it's very sort of like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you know, with a few IP here and an IP there. And yeah, for me, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't know, it all just doesn't sort of fit together. You know, like when you sort of look at Chessington World of Adventures, you sort of look at it and it all sort of themes around animals and sort of like that wild sort of adventure. And you can really feel that sort of like throughout all of the park, because sort of like all the different areas, you know, sort of all the rides are either themed towards animal or whatever, or a creature, and I like that. I like the sort of fact that it sort of continues throughout the whole park. And Alton Towers, you know, when you sort of look at their lands and their areas, they're sort of very defined, and you know, they sort of, you can sort of feel the energy and sort of like the persona that they're trying to put out in those sort of different areas. Obviously, I know with Alton Towers you have got that sort of IP there, and you've still got an IP sort of with the Gruffalo ride at Chessington, but obviously that sort of fits in still with the theme. Although I'd love to see the Bubble Works come back, as you may have seen in my previous vlog, and if you haven't seen that, go and check that one out. That's about talking just about Chessington. But yeah, so like that fit, like that Gruffalo sort of IP fits in with the theme. And with Alton Towers, obviously you've got the world of David Williams, but that sort of sits in its own sort of little area, and it has its own sort of little vibe and energy to it, which, you know, it's a standalone sort of area, and I don't sort of mind that. You know, I personally would like to see it rethemed and redone, but you know, that's for another video. We're talking about Thorpe Park. Sorry, like I said, I am going to waffle on, but right, anyway, so as we go through into Thorpe Park, you sort of come through into this sort of dome, which is a very sort of, I feel, a bland area. Personally, how I would like to see this sort of improved is, you know, when we walk into that dome, I would love to sort of just look up at, because I always do it when I walk into the dome. The first thing I do is I look up to the ceiling. Maybe you do it as well. I would like to see sort of that whole area maybe printed with like the Thorpe Park skyline and all sort of like the roller coasters sort of like just emerging, so that you sort of get that wow factor when you walk into the dome. Because I just feel like when you first walk into the dome, it's very sort of like underwhelming. So yeah, I would like to see that sort of like the skyline of Thorpe Park with all like the roller coasters popping at the top, and just so that you walk in and you have that wow, just to add to the sort of experience. That's just what I would like to see. So as you walk out into the dome, you have this sort of like Amity, the Amity Beach area, where you've got tidal wave, you've got storm surge, you've got depth charge, flying fish, and all that sort of area, which obviously to me it feels like this sort of American sort of Amity sort of beach sort of vibe, you know, that's sort of been washed away, and I get that sort of vibe. That's cool. But you have sort of, just bear in mind, I'm building up to where this is going. You have that element of water sat there, okay? So it's all to do with sort of water. And yeah, I like the area. And then obviously that then moves on to what is now the Big Easy Boulevard. And obviously you've got the bumper cars, you've got Detonator in that area, which sort of fits into that sort of American vibe, which then goes back onto, what is it, Amity Speedway for stealth. Okay, so that sort of area all sort of flows into one with that sort of American sort of vibe, and I get that. But right in the centre of that, you've then got Darren Brown's Ghost Train and the Walking Dead ride. Oh no, sorry, it's not even Darren Brown's Ghost Train anymore, sorry. Just the Ghost Train, which is known, what's that area known as? hang on, I've got it written down. Dockyard, the dockyard area. Which, okay, yes, I can understand that sort of feeds into that sort of vibe of being sort of close next to sort of like this area that's been washed out by the tidal wave and sort of that beach area. But does the Walking Dead really fit? Like, personally, I feel that IP's passed. I feel they need to sort of move on from the Walking Dead. I personally would like to see that completely go and have a complete and utter retheme. I'm not going to say what I would like to see it rethemed to just yet, because I'm going to go on to a little bit of how I would like to see sort of like the whole areas and sort of vibe go with Thorpe Park a little bit later on in the video. So bear with me. So as we go from that area there, at the dockyard area, like I said, we've got this Walking Dead and we've got the Ghost Train. Personally, those two rides I just feel are a little bit of a waste of space now, and just could do with, yeah, Walking Dead could do with a whole revamp and putting something completely new in. And the Ghost Train, I've done it once, and to be quite honest, I don't find it really re-rideable. Not that it is actually a ride, it's more of a sort of a show. I don't feel it's like an attraction that you'd want to go through more than once, and you certainly want to be queuing like a long time for it, in my opinion, that is. Yeah, not a fan of the Ghost Train. So you've got that dockyard area, but then that sort of sits on the edge of sort of Nemesis Inferno and Rumba Rapids, which is known as sort of like the jungle area. So how have we gone from sort of like this beach area in America to the jungle with the Walking sort of Dead in it and a dockyard in it? Like, we've got this sort of like jungle that's just sort of like floating out a little bit more, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's meant to be like a whole nother little separate island altogether. But how, to me, it just doesn't sort of flow. It doesn't feel right. And then you've got sort of, obviously, over the other side, you've got sort of Swarm over on Swarm Island, which is its whole little entity altogether. And, you know, when you look at the Swarm, lovely road, I love the Swarm, I think it's a good roller coaster. It's my partner's favourite roller coaster at Thorpe Park. The theming around the area is absolutely amazing. Absolutely love it. I would change the theming a little bit, but then I would have that so it sort of ties into a collective. But like I said, I'm going to get to that a little bit later on. Then obviously as we walk around from sort of like Rumba Rapids, Nemesis Inferno, sort of storming the Teacup and Big Uzi Boulevard from that jungle area, we're then going to sort of walk into Fearless Valley. Right. I'm going to have to make that a whole nother video of sort of my feelings about Hyperia, the theming of it, if you want to hear that is. If you do, drop a comment and let me know. Personally, I feel Fearless Valley, the whole name to it, I feel it's a little bit lazy. I feel it's a little bit unimaginative, you know. Let Alton Towers keep Forbidden Valley. Yeah, I'm not a fan. But nevertheless, it is what it is. We move with it. But you've got now, in Fearless Valley, this lovely sort of goddess, Hyperia. Okay, this golden goddess that's going to take you to the skies. And, you know, you can see the theming that's going, or should I say theming, stylization. Like I said, I'm going to leave that for another video because I'm not too... Can't wait to ride it. So excited to ride it, and really enthusiastic to sort of ride ride Hyperia and sort of see what it's like. Style and theming, not keen, like I said, but we'll leave that for another video. But you've got this goddess that's sitting in this corner in Fearless Valley. Can't get over that, sorry, but yeah. Move on. We then go up to Samurai and Saw, okay, which is, I believe, part of Old Town, and is still classed as Old Town, which I always thought Saw was sort of Saw Island, because obviously, but that was when obviously the maze was there, but you've got Saw and Samurai next to each other. Yeah, again, just another IP. Don't get me wrong, I think Saw still sort of fits, and I still think like the IP is sort of still quite strong and going for Saw, more so than The Walking Dead. But yet again, I don't know, I just feel with IPs, they have their time. They, you know, they don't last long. Sort of the fad will die out for them eventually. Personally, I like original theming and original sort of storylines. I would like eventually, don't get me wrong, I love Saw, I love sort of the theming and everything, but I would like to see that theme to sort of more of an original sort of concept. But nevertheless, so you've got Saw, which I feel is a little bit out of place, that IP, sitting next to Samurai, which sort of fits in quite nicely with a goddess because it's sort of like that mythological, there you go, got it out eventually, sort of feeling, sort of past, sort of like, to me it fits in with the Lost City sort of vibe more, Samurai, but apparently it's sort of Old Town. Maybe I'm wrong on that. If I am, correct me, let me know in the comments. But then we walk up to Lost City, which I'm going to be honest, Lost City is actually sort of my favourite area. Personally, I feel that Hyperia would have fitted in quite well with that Lost City sort of vibe, and that could have just been extended sort of out a little bit more. Personally, like when you look at Colossus now, obviously Colossus has never heavily been themed, but now with the sort of extra bits of sort of theming that they are adding, sort of like with the astrological sort of side of it, like the stars, the moons. I've always loved the Medusa that sits down in the Cobra Roll pit. Absolutely love her, and I'm so glad that now there's a pin for her, which I've added to the collection. But sorry, I digress. Yeah, so we've got Colossus, what I say, and I absolutely loving the theming of Colossus at the minute. And it's actually given me sort of like a new love for Colossus and sort of like a new passion for it. So it just sort of shows you that just sort of by putting in that sort of energy and that sort of TLC into sort of the theme in the storytelling side of the ride, it can really sort of enhance the experience. And then obviously I feel personally, like I said, Lost City is sort of like the nicest sort of themed area, you know, because then you've got Zodiac, which I think fits in quite nicely. You've got, what else is it? Zodiac? Yeah, Zodiac, you've got Quantum, you've got Vortex and Rush. And like I said, personally, with the naming of them, I would like to see a little bit more theming around the area, maybe sort of like that Lost City vibe sort of continued. And also maybe having the areas a little bit more defined, you know, like as we walk into sort of like these sort of the lands and the areas like you do in Alton Towers, you know you're walking into Forbidden Valley, you know you're walking into Essex, you know you're walking into Dark Forest. I think it would be nicer to see these sort of areas defined. I like sort of how they've done the Big Uzi Boulevard because I think it suits the style, but like I said, the Lost City area, that's personally my favourite, and how I would actually like to see the whole area sort of like progress and the whole sort of vibe and theming carry on throughout the park. A little bit like I said with Chessington, where I feel like it all sort of fits in quite nicely. But just with Thorpe Park, you've got all these sort of mixed matches. You've got Swarm, you've got sort of Stealth at the back, and you know, this sort of like American vibe. You've got this sort of destruction vibe over here. You've got a jungle, you've got an old town, you've got a Lost City town. And yeah, it just feels a little bit much. Personally, like I said, I'd like to see it all tied into one. And I'd like to see it go down that Lost City vibe, especially now that we're seeing sort of Thorpe Park, as they've said, they would like to sort of shift from the light to the dark, from the dark to the light. Yeah, like I said, carrying on with this sort of Lost City vibe, going with sort of more Greek goddesses, mythological sort of creatures and beings. You know, when we look at Swarm, you could look at that area and look at sort of like the god of destruction or wrath, plague, pestilence, all that sort of thing. That would fit in really well. And you could have this island of all these sort of like gods and mythological creatures that sort of all reside in sort of like the coasters. You know, Nemesis Inferno, and we're looking at all different elements here as well. You know, we look at sort of Swarm, you could look at that as an earth element. You look at sort of the area in the middle, which personally I would like to see like back to an Atlantis sort of vibe, and you could look at sort of like Poseidon and all those sort of like mythological sort of gods, beings and creatures, to bring in sort of some really good storytelling sort of packages and into the rides as well. Like with X, you know, you could X, not X. Oh my God, look, I'm showing my age now. With The Walking Dead, obviously you could retheme that into sort of like being some sort of beast. With stealth, I look at that and I can think of like Hercules, like with the strength. Nemesis Inferno, obviously the element of fire. You could look at Hades and sort of along those sort of lines. Does that make sense? Sort of where I'm sort of trying to go with this. Like you can just see like this island of all these different beasts and all these beings trying to compete with each other, all these sort of mighty sort of thrill-seeking rides. You know, we've got the big sort of like Hercules over at the back, and imagine that sort of like walking out in the dome and like, you know, you think you've got like all these big beasts and sort of raft things that are going on and all these sort of coasters trying to compete with each other. You've got Hyperia, this big goddess that's sort of showing you you're fearless. You've got Colossus, which personally I would love to see that sort of themed a little bit more around Medusa and sort of like the astrological. I'd love to see them go a little bit more in depth with that, because like I said, I found a little bit more of a love for that ride because of the sort of stylisation and the sort of theming that they're bringing back to that area. But yeah, we've got this big water area, like I said, Poseidon, whoever, do you know what I mean? And then obviously this American area, just look at maybe retheming that again. That's what I would love. And just tie it all in. So you've got all these beasts, all these gods, all these creatures, like a really mythological sort of land of all these, like I said, these big roller coasters, these big thrill-seeking sort of machines competing with each other. And I can imagine it as you're walking through the dome with like little pops of like gods coming out, like with the roller coasters on top of them as well. Do you know what I mean? Or little pictations of them. And I would just love to see that theme sort of carried all the way through. Get rid of Saw, the IP. Like I said, I love it. I think maybe it's had its time. Obviously, there's obviously the new Saw sort of coming out now. So obviously I know it'll probably be sort of hyped up again. But then you've got The Walking Dead. I feel that's dead. Pardon the pun. But yeah, look at changing that. You've got this amazing sort of coaster swarm with some amazing theming. Look at maybe just theming that a little bit more around sort of like a god bringing in sort of like plague and pestilence or devastation and destruction. You, like I said, you've got the element of water, you've got the element of fire with Nemesis Inferno, you've got the element of sort of strength and air. I would even say like air, sort of the element of air with stealth and like going up. Hyperia, you've got the element of air. Do you know what I mean? And it just feels like in Lost City, obviously you've got these flat rides, which you could look at the sort of the element of earth, spiritual, sort of witchy, all the different sort of fae, mythological gods, creatures, beings, all brought into one island and just sort of like battling with each other. That's how I would love to see sort of Thorpe Park sort of go, personally. Obviously, this is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you think as well. How would you like to see sort of Thorpe Park themed? Do you think Thorpe Park is well themed, and do you sort of like all the sort of mix match all the different sort of areas and vibes? Like I said, don't get me wrong, I do feel like some of it flows, but then there's just parts of it that sort of stand out like sore thumbs. And personally, like I said, I would like just to see it have one constant flow, one sort of whole being together, like you do with Chessington, like, you know, the Cobra, Gruffalo, Vampire, they're all themed around animals and it fits with the vibe. Alton Towers, it's all sort of like lore and legend, and I love that. Like I said, you have got that little IP world, but I feel that maybe that changed with David Williams, but yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I said, this has just been me rambling on a load of bloody nonsense, and this is probably just as... I should have had a drink through that and actually stopped just jawing. But yeah, so like I said, it's not me slagging Thorpe Park off. I absolutely love Thorpe Park. We have loads of fun times there. This is just me expressing my opinion and thoughts. And we're going to be doing a few more vlogs at Thorpe Park coming up. So we're going to be covering Hyperia opening day. I cannot wait for that, obviously. And if you would like me to do another video of talking about my thoughts and feelings on the Hyperia theming and the way that it's sort of been presented to us, sort of as to the public, sort of as they're selling it to us, so to speak, What else are we going to be covering from Thorpe Park? Obviously, we have got Fright Nights. We'll be going there in the summer, just doing sort of normal vlogs. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like I said, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And yeah, what else have we got coming up? Oh, we've got the Nemesis VIP event, which obviously we'll be filming some of that and taking you along for some of that. And yeah, like I said, we've got loads of adventures coming up, so make sure you subscribe. Let me know your thoughts and comments on what you think about Thorpe Park and its theming down below in the comments. We'll see you very soon. Bye for now.